Hey guys, so in this video I'm gonna be ranking the characters once again, except I'm gonna be fixing the ranking from my previous video because I understand the fact that it could have been much better than what it was, even though I kept telling people that my ranking might not be correct and to correct me on what characters deserve a higher ranking. However, I tried looking a little bit more into it and playing against them more, and I think this ranking, it should be much better. So anyway, without further ado, let's just get on to it. So starting off, I'm going to be giving Wyst an A rank because I thought of him as an interesting killer in the game, as he has 100 stamina, 21 sprint speed, and can deal 30 damage. Now, it might not seem like too much unless I'm wrong technically, but he was an interesting killer in the game as he was quite fast and made it hard for players to get away from him, as he managed to put up quite a challenge. And he had two interesting abilities, one of which is Gobble Bomb and the other one is Frenzy. As Gobble Bomb is more of when this thing spits out a white ball. I think that's supposed to go at the person and then explodes, unless I'm wrong about it. While Frenzy is more like a low, it's like a growling thing that I actually don't know how to fully explain it, but I do have to admit, like I said, he was a challenge at first, and he still is a challenge. And with the hitbox he has, I actually thought of him as an A rank. Might not be too much of an explanation, but still. Now, next one is MX. I had unfortunately originally gave him a C rank because I didn't really know much about his abilities and how good he could potentially be. But when I actually played against him once again, I do have to admit I was kind of surprised, and I slowly realized that technically he was way higher than I originally thought of him as. As you may know, he has 75 stamina, 24 sprint speed, and deals 70 damage per hit, which he's quite a heavy hitter, or at least I thought of him as such. He had, I think, 3 abilities, such as jumping, or I think that's kind of like stomping, where like whenever he stomps, like you have to jump and it takes like 8 stamina, and the player normally has a cooldown. But I do have to say though, especially in Double Trouble, if there are 2 MXs in game, then you would technically be screwed, because all it takes is just one MX jumping and then the other one waiting until after you land just to do it again, and then you trip, and then it easily would be the end of you. And I originally thought, I was like, oh damn, he's really that good. But he also had Bloodlust, which is like whenever he kills a player not in game, like all the other players would be visible for at least 9 seconds, which I'm like, especially if you're close, it would be easy for him to hunt you down, because so since you're close, it means you're an easy kill for this guy, especially if he knows how to go after you. And there's also Charging Demise, which is basically like how he charges at you normally. Especially I think he builds up speed when he does this. So especially when he gets you, he deals quite a bit of damage in game towards the player. And depending on which, it could be a very easy KO. That's why I thought of giving him more of a higher rank, because he's a lot more better than what I initially thought of. Alright, next one up is going to be Baldi at A rank. I'm going to be keeping him in the original rank because he's actually, in a way, a decent character. Even though at first he starts off slow, he does have infinite stamina and can do 45 damage. And the thing is, even if he's slow at start, it actually, again, because he has the ability to build up speed, and there isn't really a limit to how much speed he could potentially build up, he could probably wipe out most of the server towards the end, because he might become quite fast if you know how to use him correctly. And the thing is, he had 2 good abilities, one of which is Math, which is more of him placing down a notebook, and of course the player has to answer it correctly, as if they answer it incorrectly, you take some damage. And the other one is Anti-Hearing Tape, that may end up with letting out a lot of noise or something, or making it so that the player is highlighted, unless I'm incorrect about that. I don't have too much to say about Baldi, but is that never underestimate him, even if he looks like he might be easy, because he has no limit onto how fast he can really be. Yeah, you would want to think carefully, otherwise you'd probably end up in a coffin. Next one up is Fuwatti, which we're going to be keeping him at his original ranking, around B ranking, because he is good in a way, he is viable, though he does have a limitation in a sense. I would say he's a good killer in game due to two of his abilities, such as Silly Rush, which is him rushing at the target he's trying to go after, and Omnivision, which basically means it highlights all the players in game so that you're able to see where they are for a certain period of time. He is good in a sense if you know how to use him. Like, let's say for example, if you're using attacks and then you use Silly Rush at the right moment, then you can easily kill the player. But he has, I think, like a smaller hitbox in game. If I'm wrong, you could correct me on it, but he does have a smaller hitbox in game, so you may find yourself using Silly Rush more when you're trying to do the finishing blow. But anyway, up next is basically Faker EXE, which originally, before I looked more into him, I put him as a D rank. After making that video, it was kind of a mistake, but I would rank him probably an A rank. It was due to me discussing with a friend of mine about his abilities and how he is as a character, and he actually let me know how decent of a character he could actually be, even if he's more like a trap character. He, as you may know, or maybe not, he has 105 stamina, 20 sprint speed, and can deal 45 damage per hit. And he has two abilities such as Too Slow and Throwing Grade. And if you don't know, Too Slow is kind of like more of a charge ability where he tries to reach out to you with like long hands. And if he gets you, how do I say it? He can deal a good amount of damage. While Thorny Grade is more of like a trap, like a bunch of tendrils underneath, and if the player actually steps on it, he gets stuck. Now with this, he could actually manage to kill you, because especially if you fall into the trap, it's not easy to break out of. I've literally seen in game how many players Faker EXE managed to kill off, and I have to say, I'm like surprised that I gave him a D rank to begin with, because he was much better than I originally thought of him. But I don't have too much of an opinion on him, other than him being a trap character and some good things he can do. But besides that, let's move on to the next one. Alright, so next one up is Fogborn, which I'm going to be keeping him in A rank, because I do think of him as a good character in game, as I've seen how he is used by most players that use him. And I do have to say, he is quite a challenge in game, as you already may have known. He has 100 stamina, 25 sprint speed, and deals 30 damage per hit, and was considered, I think, the third fastest killer in game, unless there is more faster killers in game at the moment, which we already know, Sonic EXE is going to be coming out into the game as another killer. But what I thought of Fogborn was more about his abilities, such as Thunder Warp and Foggy Stare. Thunder Warp is more of when he strikes lightning down on his current location and disappears for a moment before he reappears. While Foggy Stare is more like he looks like he's invisible for a few seconds, and if the player stares at him for a certain amount of time, it's going to trigger his ability. And as you already know, he ends up chasing the player. But what I have to say is, depending on how he's used, he can actually wipe out a server. I'm going to keep him in this ranking because, basically I've seen him server wipe people, or especially in Double Trouble, he can be a really tough cookie, especially depending on what you're up against, unless the second killer ends up being worse. But yeah, that's mostly my opinion. Alright, up next, Rosemary, which I'm going to be keeping her in D rank like I did last time. Mainly because, again, it's like the worst killer in this game, unless I'm wrong. But even though it's supposed to be like a really fast killer, and I've seen that, the problem has to do with its stamina being quite low, so it gets tired pretty easily. So even if, let's say, you're playing as Rosemary, or you know someone playing as Rosemary, and you've seen how they are in game, like, okay, sure, they can get some kills, but because of their low stamina, it means there's a good chance players could most likely escape, and depending on how you go up against Rosemary, they can barely win a game unless you have double trouble. Alright, next one up will be Vapor. Unfortunately, I would, well, of course I'm going to keep him in the same rank as last time, but the reason I give Vapor a C rank is because it's considered kind of a really mid, or bad killer in game. As you may know, he has 18 sprint speed, 100 stamina, and can deal, I think, 75 damage, unless I'm wrong about the damage part. Due to the fact that he's quite slow in game, there isn't much of an advantage you'd really have with him, because most players could quite easily avoid you depending on the situation. He does have two abilities, such as Demonic Shift, which is more of him teleporting to another location, and also Spider Skulls, which is basically summoning little minions at your disposal to go after players in game, and they can help to either deal enough damage or to kill off the closest player possible. But the reason I rank him C is because with this, he's quite underwhelming. Maybe the Spider Skulls give him some advantage to slow players down so you can kill him. No, so you can kill them. But there isn't really too much you can do with him, and especially, again, unless like Double Trouble, for example, you're technically not gonna do all that much with this killer. I've tried using this killer, and I was thinking of blaming him, but the thing is, he's not that viable, and to most players, this could be very easy for them to avoid, and with the Spider Skull, it just takes like, what, 2 or 3 hits. There isn't all that much to say about him, but as a killer, yeah, nah, he wouldn't be that much of a threat. Alright, up next, we're going to be giving Springtrap an A rank, which is the same rank I gave him last time. So you might notice some killers rankings stay the same while others have to be changed, but I can't really say too much for him. He can be viable in some cases, and maybe I could be wrong. But the only disadvantage I noticed so far was his speed, for example, where, like, if you look at his stats, he has 120 stamina, 18 sprint speed, and 40 damage. So he does less damage, and he has less speed, but a bit more stamina in game. He has 2 interesting abilities, such as Ventilation Air and Phantom Step, which Ventilation Air is more of when he starts glitching out, and then for about nearly 5 seconds he causes some sort of error that would make it so that anyone nearby would most likely start to hyperventilate, or at least the characters, not other people would start hyperventilating in game, and your screen would turn black for like every 2 seconds. I've seen it myself, because when I go up against him, I've seen like how he is, because he's able to blind my screen, and I heard from others that they blind their screen as well, so it makes it very hard for them to see, which gives Glitchtrap the advantage. Springtrap, I gotta start saying the name right. Springtrap the advantage to kill off the players very easily, even if he's not fast. Meanwhile, Phantom Step is like a speed boost, basically, from 18 to 24. I don't have too much of an opinion. I have seen how he is. He's alright, but I can't really give him too much of a reason for an A rank. But yeah, moving on to the next killer. So up next is King of the Forest, which I think originally I gave A rank, but I don't know. I thought of King of the Forest more as a B rank, which means it's still good, just not exactly 100% the best, but again, I could always be wrong, like I said. This killer has 100 stamina, 20 sprint speed, and can deal 25 to 40 damage per hit. It has two interesting abilities, such as Glitching Blitz and Lurking Facade. But to say what Lurking Facade is, it's kind of like similar to some killers that have the ability to summon little creatures that basically chases the player. That's basically what it is. For King of the Forest, while Glitching Blitz is more of when they begin to glitch out and fire like little glitchy projectiles, if that's how you even call it. There isn't too much I have to say for this. It's not so hard to use as a killer, and you could definitely deal some good amount of damage and maybe server wipe. But I wouldn't really call this killer like the best, but I would say it's a good killer overall in its own way. But yeah, that's the shortest description because I don't know too much about some of them, but I have seen in game how they play. But I only seen them like a few times, so technically I can't fully give off. But again, comment down below what you would actually do. Alright, next one up. I don't even know how to say his name. Niloticus, or however you actually say his name. I do owe this man an apology because before me realizing the stat buff him getting buffed up, I gave him a lower ranking, and that was until later I had realized he was actually buffed up before. As even though his original stats, for example, were 27 sprint speed, 42 stamina, and 20 damage, he can actually be viable to some degree, especially with the buff, even if before he wasn't as good. Two of his abilities he has is Godly Leap, which is basically him lunging towards the player and dealing 25 damage, and depending on it, like if he manages to hit a survivor with the radiated debuff, or however you say it, he could do 50 damage instead. And Irradiated Mist, which is more of him creating this red puddle and adding 3 seconds to the timer. I don't know too much about his buff stats, but I did see that he can do a lot more in game, and I think is mainly that he can regenerate stamina more faster. Again, I might probably need more insight on this. This is the one killer I don't see very often, so I may not know all there needs to be about this killer. However, that I give him an A rank. But again, like I always say, if I am wrong, you could comment down below what character deserved a much better ranking than what they had initially received. Now, next one up is Oni, as he is an interesting troll character. I think I originally had him in A rank. He has 21 sprint speed, 100 stamina, and can deal 40 damage in game. He was interesting due to two of the abilities he have, and two of which is Oni Vision and Shapeshift. Oni Vision is like more of he can see I think it's more of he can see where you guys are, while Shapeshift is more of course, like in the name, he can shapeshift into any other player, but for a certain period of time. I think, however, there's a limitation with the shapeshifting, as your stamina may be more lower with it. Now, next one up is Inkfell, which I'd keep him at A rank. Let's look at his stats. He has 16 sprint speed, 130 stamina, and 45 damage per hit. Even though he is normally quite slow, he is I think to some degree can deal a good amount of damage, especially to people. And with the three abilities that he has, such as Devil's Portal, Devil's Rage, and Devil's Dive, Even if he's a slow character, with these abilities, he could most likely deal quite a bit of damage. And for Devil's Portal, it's more of throwing, like, how do I explain it for him? That ability involves throwing like a massive amount of ink onto the ground, and if a player walks through it, it gives like an ink status effect, which basically means he can see where you are for a certain period. Now for Devil's Rage is more of, I think he's charging up a lot of, quite a bit of damage into that one attack when you use that ability, because he's able to deal 55 damage. Now for Devil's Dive, on the other hand, besides Devil's Rage, Devil's Dive is where he actually leaps forward from a distance, which when you look at it that way, I'm like, kind of reminds me of the other killer, but with this, I'd say just like others that normally charge at the player, this could probably catch some players off guard, or maybe not, but it does depend. I think it's possible to avoid it, but it really depends on the player's reaction time for it. Alright, so up next, Uncle Samsonite. Probably gonna put him in A rank as well. Well, I put quite a bit of characters in A rank because they were really decent in game if used correctly. However, for Uncle Samsonite, he is interesting. He is another slow character with 19 sprint speed, though he has 100 stamina and can deal 50 damage per hit. So even though he is lacking in the speed department, his power does make up for it in a way, and he has 3 abilities such as Beat, Laydown, Uncle's Wrath, and Domain Transversal. I don't really know how to explain the abilities all that much, though for Take to Domain, it's more of, he's gonna be, I think this is where he would teleport you. No, he will teleport you to a certain room where you have to find the correct door, otherwise you get killed off pretty quickly. While Beat Laydown is more when he starts moving his arms up and down for like a few seconds, and then he's basically highlighting every player, so just like some other killers, he would know exactly where you are at a certain point. And the next one is Uncle's Wrath, which I think is kind of similar to Inkfell's Devil's Rage ability, which is more of him charging up a good amount of damage, so that he can use it towards the player, and I think he would slam his foot down or something. Alright, so the last one, Vita Mimic, I'm going to be putting him in B tier. Mainly because he is an interesting killer, I would say. He has 100 stamina, 21 sprint speed, and can deal anywhere from 15, being the lowest damage, to 30 damage per hit. Which I'd say it's not a lot, like it is kind of weak. But he is interesting because he has good stamina, low stamina drain. But besides that, there isn't too much of an advantage, I'd say, using him. Because he does have 2 interesting abilities such as Elder Ascension and Animalistic Instinct. And if you don't really know, the best way I could explain Elder Ascension is more of him posing menacingly in some way. And I think Screeching, I don't know how to explain that one all that well. I don't have too much info on that. However, for Animalistic Instinct, it's more of him making this low humming sound that allows him to outline all the players in game. So he is able to find you, kind of like how Fuwatti or I think Aoni uses Oni Vision, which allows them to also find you. So he is interesting in its own way, but he isn't very fast. And I hope this does fix some things, because I didn't want to keep the same rating as before, and the other video was kind of rushed in a way, because I eventually figured out after the video was over that some of these killers were not ranked correctly. So I hope this does fix them. Maybe they deserve higher rankings. I was talking about this with a friend of mine, and We didn't know what killer should be S tier, but he did correct me on quite a bit of the killers that I ranked. However, he did tell me Vita Mimic should have been A tier, but I wasn't sure about that, so I put him B tier. But I don't know. But as for the other killers like Faker EXE, MX, and anything else, yeah, I had to put him high. But anyway, thank y'all for watching, and see you all in the next one, I guess.